Yes, welcome everybody. Very excited to have you all here for the fourth town hall meeting on disaster planning, preparedness, response through sort of the permaculture lens. I'm Jesse. I'm with PINA, the Permaculture Institute of North America, and I'm here on behalf of and with our co-sponsors, Association for Regenerative Culture, that's ARC, and We Regenerate. So we three all collectively are sort of stewarding these town hall series and then the subsequent work that's going to be getting done and the publications and whatnot that may come from it. So we plan to have more of these, and we're very open to learning from y'all and sort of like taking feedback, incorporating information that you have. And not just that, but if people want to actually get down and dirty into some of the research, then we have working groups that can be born out of this and are already active. So if that interests you, just reach out and let us know on the PCX or elsewhere, and we'd be happy to have you guys. So let me introduce Lee, and Lee is here. He's the president and founder of ARC. So he's here also just to frame, and he's sort of the impetus behind why we're doing these disaster series. I think there's a lot of folks who've been thinking this way, especially in response to Helene, which affected Lee personally and his community. And then, boom, it was just the right time, and all the right people were in the room. And Lee's like, I have this idea. I think we should be focusing on this. So, Lee, Lee Barnes, PhD, is president and founder of ARC, the Association for Regenerative Culture, and a passionate advocate for permaculture and environmental sustainability with a background in environmental horticulture. Lee has dedicated over 3 years to educating and empowering individuals to embrace regenerative practices. He co-founded the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering and has been instrumental in organizing numerous seed and plant shares, emphasizing the importance of preserving heirloom and native plant varieties. Lee's expertise extends to regional natural history, old growth forest preservation, sustainable agriculture, and dowsing. He is a strong believer in fostering a sense of place and inspiring individuals to take responsibility for regenerating the future. Amen to that. And welcome, Lee. I'll give you the floor, and I'll be your PowerPoint guy. So let me know when you want me to pull up stuff.
All right. Well, I'm Lee Barnes. I'm currently living about 30 miles from Asheville, North Carolina, pretty much the epicenter of Helene. I'm also involved in scouting properties, and I know I'm getting emotional here. I know these places that have been damaged. It dawned on me that, hey, it's time for permaculture to help people and educate them for more resiliency. And I'm seeing developing community. I've been developing community through ARC and, well, supporting PCX. That's another thing to plug.
Yeah.
So, one of the biggest storms on record, it was a Category 4 when it hit Florida. Helene, I knew it was coming. I followed weather. I knew a week ahead that a big one was forming. And I remember National Weather Service going, this will be the most severe storm of your life 2 days before. And we were totally unprepared. Next slide. This kind of shows you the air. These are the night lights that are out because of Helene. And this to me is just very dramatic. There were, probably 7 states impacted, and it's going to be a long recovery time. Next slide. This shows some of the rainfall. It wasn't uniform. We did have probably tornadoes and microbursts involved, but there were places that got up to 30 inches in 3 days. So multiple disaster. Not only was surge flooding, there was also debris flows. Debris flows are more complicated than landslides. We had 2 that traveled 2 miles, rocks, trees, anything in their way. And most people were killed in those. And also as a major economic hit. We are fall is our big season for tourism, and this just hit at a really bad time for that. A lot of crops also hadn't been harvested. So what I'm looking at is a future disaster. It could be fire. the incredible amount of damage to the national forests and urban forests is setting us up for extensive problems. And politics is getting involved, and it's getting a little weird. But if you're in the area, yeah, these are just some of the landslides. These were early ones. I've got others that show there were probably about 2,000 landslides that mostly impacted travel. Next. This is just an example of a small creek that's now washed out. This is very common, and parts of roads. Next. So this is just, I happened to pick this up. This one isn't my picture, but a small bucolic stream, in the rhododendrons, and probably a 2 to 3 foot wide stream. Next slide, please. This is that same location after Helene. So it's almost undescribable. This was I happened to watch this one get repaired over a couple months. The access was, this is near Lake Lure, totally wiped out. And the engineering looks like it was the local people. It didn't look like it had a state engineering, but people are helping each other. I'm seeing slow lifting up. Next. This is an example. Asheville is proud of its urban forest, and there was extensive damage, especially to the oak trees. They shallow rooted apparently, and we had a heavy wet period before Helene hit, and they toppled. So this next slide. This fascinates me. This is Asheville. If you notice the bridge on the left, and on the almost center is the last section of that bridge that must be 50 to 60 feet long, that was broken and then moved by the strength of the water. So just amazing. Next. This shows some telemetry that the Forest Service can use to determine relative amounts of damage. And this happens to be Elk Mountain Scenic Highway above Asheville. Asheville is in the lower lower left-hand corner. But next picture, you can see it hit the high ridges. This is actually up on Elk Mountain. These are my photos. It took a month for them had to go up and remark a place that my markings are blown away. Next picture. This is getting up near the Blue Ridge Parkway where the road is gated. Right now, I'm hearing figures of $1 billion to fix Blue Ridge Parkway, probably $1 billion to fix I-40, a major east-west road, and anywhere from estimates of 50 billion to 200 billion to recover. Next. And this is the last one. This the eastern facing slopes got some bad winds, and this is just an example of one area in the forest that wood is going to be drying during the season, and I can just imagine that much is going to be canopy fires, not just ground level. So I'm telling people, and we'll get out suggestions of how to prepare for fire, but definitely have an escape plan and a backup to that, and be prepared with your to-go bags. So that's just kind of a shotgun approach to where we're at. I envision that we wanted part of this to be online, and part of it that people could download before the power goes out. And I think Corrine will tell more about that. And it's an ongoing project, and we're asking you folks, if you have suggestions or want to volunteer, you can join our working group, or you can just post things in the chat here that are helpful. And we're open to phone calls if that helps. But recovery is happening. People ask me how long. Well, I'm going to say 1,000 years. I know old growth forest, you need at least 2 cycles of the oldest age trees and to semi-reproduce that. This is resetting our forest ages, similar to the chestnut blight. and we're going to have a lot of forests of similar age in the future. So I've gone way past what I should be doing, but so let me just turn it over. And but thank you for attending and helping anyway.
That was great, Lee. You didn't go way over it all. That was perfect. I could listen to you talk more about, especially the impact that you've seen, personally, because it's made much more real and concrete when you see some of these pictures. So thank you for framing that. And yeah, that's sort of the one disaster that spurned us on, but then quickly after was the Palisades, and then it's just not going to end, right? Like we're just going
And
to end.
Kentucky has just gotten flooded
Yeah.
major.
Yeah, so maybe that affected Melanie or people or something like that. So, and as we obviously know, permaculture has a really sort of like robust framework for all things regenerative. So that's really what Corrine has been working on with several of us behind the scenes, but is organizing disaster response with through the frame of permaculture. So this like if we're going to build back, when we have to build back, we're going to try to do it regeneratively and based on some of the patterns and the setup systems that permaculture gives to us. So thank you again, Lee. That was great. And then I think what we'll do is we'll go to Seal if you're feeling ready, Seal. I know you're eating, so I want to make sure you feel good to go. Okay, yeah, you muted. I think I muted you.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
you feeling good?
Yeah.
Are you feeling
Yeah,
ready-ish?
yeah, I just finished eating. I'm still working on my coffee, but
Oh, yeah, well,
I
take
think
your
I can
time. Let me
go.
read your bio, okay, and then I'll pass it over to you. And we're really looking forward to it. And thanks for being
Oh,
here.
thank you. How much time do I have? Just
I think 10 minutes would be great. If you got to go over by 5 or so, that's totally fine too. It's very much like a general overview introduction of yourself and your work
yeah,
to our group. Um,
okay.
knowing that we could go much longer and much deeper to do it a little bit more
Exactly.
justice.
Okay, good.
Yes. So Seal Smith is a consultant, scientist, systems thinker, researcher, activist, networker, artist, mother, and lover of music, poetry, and the greater than human world. She was born and raised on the banks of the South Fork of the Trinity River in Northern California's Klamath bioregion and has lived and worked throughout California, the Sonoran Desert, Yucatan Peninsula, San Luis Valley, South Central and Kenai Peninsula, and Central Portugal and Middle Tennessee, kind of all over. That's awesome. She founded and directed the Alaska Climate Action Network and Alaska Institute for Climate and Energy, and co founded the Renewable Communities Alliance, Colorado Grassroots Energy Network, Solar Done Right, San Luis Valley Water Protection Coalition, and most recently, the Ecocene Adaptation Network and Symbiocene Revolution with eco-philosopher Dr. Glenn Albrecht. She has a Master of Science in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology and a Master of Education from the University of Arizona, Tucson, and a BA in Eco Development and Environmental Policy from UC Santa Cruz. That's an awesome collection of not just the titles, but like what they actually hint at about what you've been studying and doing with your life's work. So I can't wait to hear more from you, Seal. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, well, when you get to be in your 60s, the bio gets a little longer.
Yeah,
just
indeed.
like Corrine and Lee and so I'm joining y'all in that age group. Yeah, thank you for inviting me and the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I'll just do a quick background on how I got to where I am today with the Eocene Adaptation Network, which is probably most relevant for this group. So back, I was living in Alaska, those part of that bio with the Kenai Peninsula in South Central Alaska. I lived from 2013 to 2022. And that's where I did a lot of work on climate energy. And it became very, very evident to me that climate change was happening a lot faster. It was not going to happen, it was happening. and so there were two narratives I was hearing in the general activist community that were very concerning. One of them was that climate change was something that's going to happen in the future. And the other one is that on the opposite spectrum was that the whole planet's going to burn up and we're all going to die. So somewhere in that, I was like, well, I think there's another story here. And and I agree that things were accelerating because I had seen the data from the Arctic had been going along in the usual trajectory like this, and then suddenly it went like this. I think it was in 2015 or 16. And, that to me was a clear signal that things are accelerating. So I got this idea. I'm just sort of a research nerd, and I run into papers all the time, and I ran into one from a big group of paleoclimatologists that basically said, well, if we keep going the way we're going, we're going to end up where we used to be in the Eocene, which was 55 million years ago. So really amazing paper. I read it, soaked it in, and the bottom line to me was that, whoa, the planet didn't burn. It was roughly 12 degrees warmer at that time, at the same carbon dioxide level that we're headed towards. And not only was there still life, but it was flourishing. It was right after the, 10 million years. I mean, I'm an evolutionary biologist, so a few million years isn't much time for me. So I'm like, right after the dinosaurs went extinct, 10 million years later, the Arctic was tropical. And I have friends that were doing excavation. They were finding tapir fossils in Kenai Peninsula, Alaska. And so, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. The climate's equilibrated at the time. The AMOC shut down, a lot of things happened, but life is flourishing. And so to me, that was sort of very counter to the narrative we're all going to burn up and die. So a lot of the taxa that are extant now evolved in the Eocene. So my sense of it is that we have this, life has a genetic memory. Life has amazing capacity to adapt. So I don't think we have to assume it's all going to burn up and die. Now, human infrastructure, that's a different story. We didn't have 8 billion people on the planet. We didn't have all this infrastructure, all this technology. So that creates, of course, a very different situation for the natural world to adapt and evolve. And we were already, in the middle of the extinction event. So anyway, these were the narratives that I was trying to counter. So I got this idea to start this Eocene Adaptation Network to sort of jolt people out of this reality that climate change is going to happen in the future. We crossed 350 in 1988, which was thought to be the safe zone for carbon dioxide, for humanity to exist, the Holocene. So there was, I was like, we need something to sort of shock people out of that and also shock them out of this idea that, the planet life still can't exist on a warmer planet. So we started this group, and it was just, funky little Facebook group. And that's where I met Corinne. I think we bumbled into each other online, and a few other people. And then this really amazing eco-philosopher in Australia, Glenn Albrecht, who wrote a book called Earth Emotions. And he also coined the word, if anybody's heard the word, solastalgia. Anybody heard that word, solastalgia? It describes the grief and the sadness that people feel when they lose a place they love. So it's very place-based, and so much of us are witnessing so much change. So anyway, long story, too long of a story to tell here today, but so we started this little group, and we're kind of putzing along on Facebook. It's, Facebook is just what it is. And so Corinne and I met, and actually we started talking just independently. And let's see, I'm going to go back to my notes because I don't want to get too far off. So, okay, I wasn't going to go too much into detail on that, other than that's how I met Corinne and connected with ultimately all you guys. So I'm going to fast forward to now. Here we are. with an insane disassociated billionaire coup. Potentially no NOAA, no FEMA, possibly global war, very possibly economic collapse. So now the whole Eocene trajectory is sort of catapulted into this big question of how do we navigate in the dark? When obviously nothing's going to be done about climate change, no mitigation. It's probably, who knows what's. I have no crystal ball. None of us do. But I'm holding that question of potentially how are we going to navigate in the dark? And Corinne proposed this idea, and it segues with other people's ideas about creating islands of sanity or life pods. This is really resonating with me and with her, and I think will very much with others too, that we need to sort of prioritize creating a network of sanity. And the work you guys are doing here, I think, is absolutely central and critical, and I'm really, really grateful to be connected with you all. We talk about, knowledge sharing, knowledge generating. I follow, some of you may know, Tyson Yucca Porta. He is an Australian Aboriginal, and he's written 2 books. His latest one is called Right Story, Wrong Story. And it was so funny, right after I talked to Corinne yesterday, this came up on my podcast, and he started talking about trans-knowledging. And I just love that idea. It really encapsulates what I have been thinking about, how if we have this network of communities, and I think there's many already existing, and the first step would be to strengthen those connections between these other communities that are already doing their thing. And then do just a lot of what he calls yarning, talking, sharing information. And as you guys are already doing, compiling it, but with the idea that knowledge is a living thing, that it's constantly changing and evolving. So it's not a static thing that we can necessarily put on a hard drive, But so those are some thoughts around knowledging and nomadism, because I've been a nomad for 2 years now, and it's making me realize, like, I'm just one of many millions of, climate, political, whatever, refugees, and that's going to be a part of our future, that we're going to need to be mobile and nomadic. So I'll sum it all up by talking about some of the possible communities that I think, are already primed and we could start to talk to and about. And, of course, all you guys in the Asheville area, I have some connections with the farm in Tennessee. There's, of course, Corinne in Florida. Friends in New York with Labase Corey, can't say her farm right, but she has a sustainable farm upstate New York. I used to live in Crestone, Colorado, which is another kind of center of green building and all that thing, even though they're half crazy. And then friends in Las Vegas and Tucson. I'm in Tucson now, and they've been doing, this kind of stuff. Brad Lancaster, a significant community working already for many decades on sustainable issues. And there's a really cool community in Patagonia. The Klamath Mountains, we're reaching out. There's some people there, and many more. So I just, wanted to talk about that idea and see what people think about kind of prioritizing that networking aspect, and then having all this great stuff, information to share and disseminate, and expanding this conversation, bringing more of those people in. So I hope I didn't take too much time.
Oh no, absolutely. That was perfect. Thank you, Seal. You give us a really great launching point now to deeper these conversations that we're having right here. Guys, I wonder what y'all think. There's 9 folks here. Should we do a breakout room, or should we just simply pass around? If anybody has thoughts or comments, we can just, I think there's enough a small enough group here that we can do that well regulated and not talking over each other. But I'm open to doing breakout rooms too. Any thoughts on that? And everybody's muted, but just let me know. Yep.
I'd love to stay together since it's so small.
Yeah, that's what I was
Mhm.
feeling too.
Me too.
Okay, great. Saves me the technical headache of facilitating breakout rooms in Zoom also. So yay. So with just what Seal said, then, I mean, I have some prompts, but she gave such a good framework and some really stimulating ideas. Did anything pop up for people or feel very alive for people?
I have a side comment because did my landscape resilience at Ryerson. My professor, he's a very old man, and then he's always says like everything will be fine in geological time.
Okay.
So he's very optimistic about that.
Yeah, it doesn't help
Mhm.
us in the current epoch, really, but it's true.
Yeah,
Nature
that
will be
that
fine.
coalesces with what Lee was saying about the 1,000-year recovery.
Exactly. Yeah. And
I
you
did
know,
want to
go ahead,
talk
Francis.
about when Lee said the 1,000-year recovery thing, because then I mean obviously there's things we cannot do without just having the time. But recently on the work in progress paper I was working with one of my students, there was a thing we saw in a pattern in Germany. I think they did this living facades for buildings where they just kind of I think it's below that they grafted all around the building, and that kind of created this side. And then I remember asking my student to explore. It's definitely not the same as like an old forest growth tree, but in a city or like a biophilic city in the future, you have this idea about like the surface area of the tree. And it provides shelter on the inside of the tree. So what is providing shelter?
Yeah, multiple yields.
So it's kind of and it's very huge in structure because it's supported by the building inside. So that I wonder how much of an ecological niche that it replicates. Not obviously like maybe 10% of it replicates for really large mother trees in forests, and maybe that can help towards having more ecotranspiration in city centers, in urban places were adopted. But then interesting in your thoughts, because when I saw that I was like, it could be a thing, but who knows?
I'll let anybody else jump in with Francis' thoughts or from Seal's ideas. All right, well, let's talk about life pods. Let's talk about that just real quick. Like, how do y'all see that work being done? Because I think there's this distinction between the digital, which it's wonderful that we're doing what we're doing here, and we can connect to Brad Lancaster and Tyson Yunkaporta and Seal, and it's wonderful, right? But on the other hand, it seems to be much more necessary and much more like profoundly meaningful in case of disaster if it's locally embedded. So I wonder what you all think about the differentiation between a life pod locally with people that you're working together with versus the digital sphere, and how to weave them together in a way that also doesn't maybe engender burnout issues, or just making activism the sole focus of your life, which I'm for until it starts to burn you out mentally and degrade the quality of your own mental health.
Oh, gosh. I don't know the term life pod.
Yeah, same. I thought it would be like in a disaster situation where you have escape pods. That's where my brain.
Well, you guys also called it a sanity pod, right?
Centers of, what was it? Centers of
Islands of Sanity.
Islands of Sanity. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
You get the idea. I don't think it matters what we call it. We can call it whatever we want, but the idea of it is places that are, kind of refuge, sanctuary.
Okay.
There's a lot of, dynamics to that, but I think you raise an important question, Jesse, about, the digital versus the local. And I think personally, I think that we have to be working simultaneously, and that's part of the reason for either very quickly getting, networking with existing communities and or very quickly establishing new ones. We don't have much time. We're thinking 4 or 5 months before things really collapse. Maybe, who knows? I mean, again, no crystal ball, but we have this sense of urgency. So I think communicating, digitally as long as we can, but recognizing we could lose that capacity, either intermittently or, I mean, if we have a Starlink, but guess who controls Starlink?
Yeah. Yeah, one idea that I mean, I started thinking about this because a lot of cities and towns are not really serious about creating enough resilience. They're still caught up in their day-to-day problems and the momentum of modern society. And we who know better, who are permaculturists and who have technology, I think we need to be more effective about organizing and coming together in our own local communities. This project can assist with that. There's other tools that can assist with that, but it's time to become the source that people go to in our local communities to have these solutions when they are needed. Some communities are going to be a lot more receptive and able to do this than others, and some permaculturists are going to go off in their own intentional community and do this, and maybe interface with their local community to the degree that they can. I think that we need to be thinking about our own well-being. It's like putting on the oxygen mask first. As one of my friends used that analogy, so that we can help others. And a lot of us are not really thinking about that. We haven't done the checklist for this disaster preparedness ourselves. So, that's part of my motivation for getting involved in this project. And I think it can be much bigger than just disaster preparedness, but community resilience concept, whatever that means, whether it's your own neighborhood or your own group of friends or an intentional community somewhere on a piece of land, or your small town that you're close to, etc. Okay.
Yeah. I saw Francis hand up and then Melanie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karina.
Yeah, I think the term is to build adaptive capacity, I believe. And then I think in terms of permaculture, the approach in permaculture, at least from what I observe, is very much bottom up. And it's important. I'm trying to borrow language from the pattern language here. It's like building centers where you're creating the yield. So centers of resilience, and then if they're networked together, the greater whole is more resilient. It's a very fractal way of building that. And if there's like an analogy between what that center could be to what churches meant in the old days. Is like a safe place that have resources and welcomes people. I think that's useful for outreach. And then I think permaculture is homesteaders. We have the ability to bond as a community or do it ourselves locally to somehow capture a yield to give, right? And then that could be the start of doing something bottom up. And through digital, I mean, that's actually my more on my domain, but I just Jesse, you said something that's very interesting to me because, and then I don't want to disagree with you, but it's kind of saying like, oh, what if you just did activism until you're burnt out, right? And I see this as a real problem. I am not an activist, and then actually I say this a lot with in terms of climate change or the whole narrative being on the one side you have the peer activists, philosophers, and then on the other side you have the peer deniers. We know who they are. And then I have to say, like, I tell people where I am on the spectrum. I'm right there in the middle where I use economic means to push a needle. I cannot be sitting in protests because I believe those people must exist because they remind us why we're doing things. But peer protest, to me, like my skill set does a very different thing. But to that point, that's why I want to say, like, when you create these centers of experience, natural healing, and then I think my MBA thesis was on these, like, can we build ecotourism? Really piggyback on that. The most people that can help. So I think if you bring the economics of it, not to make it less meaningful, but the people that are most likely to have a different pattern when they're experiencing a ecotourism homestead, nature healing, etc. They're most stressed people. They have the resources, and they're the best people to kind of onboard onto the concept to help build up resources. So I feel like if you think about macro's perspective, I would love to have, many people making these centers of like resource-rich diversity and community resilience, but also focus on the outreach aspect of it too. Maybe bring the economic aspect to it, make it ecotourism. Like let people live on a homestead, let them harvest their own food, experience it for once, because city people don't do that, right? They don't know what it's like to relate to us. So I feel like there's a way to bring resources in and also expand this outreach and also have a system to can support ourselves to build these centers that can web together to build greater community resilience at, like, initially village level, then township level, and maybe societal level. But like that's my 2 cents on it. But
Yeah.
it goes back to business, I guess, at some point.
And leverage. It sounds like you're really thinking about the leverage of it. Thank you, Francis. I think Melanie first and then Seal second. On any topic that you had in mind.
Okay, there's so many. First I wanted to say, so sorry, Tilly, I could see your emotions in the pictures just stun me every time I see them. Digitally, it is what keeps me a little sane. I am in a really red state, and it is somewhat dangerous to speak out about things you're concerned about, honestly. And so I feel very isolated, yet I know I've connected with lots of neighbors who do not feel safe with the new administration. I have a lot of older neighbors for some reason, and I care about them. And so digitally, I feel sane because I can get resources and education, but yet locally, even with local government, I feel I see the ineptness of planning, and it just makes me feel even more alone, really, in what's coming down the pipeline. And so I already felt really disoriented by the speed of things happening, all the different, sorry if my dog is licking around, the speed of all the disasters happening, and then all the economic stuff, and then we've got the culling of all the birds, and it's so much that I'm constantly thinking of, oh, well, wait, how am I going to feed my dogs if I'm thinking about our food and my neighbor's food, but then just the simple things I never really had to worry about. If chicken's in your dog food, if beef is in your dog food. So it can start to feel like a tsunami, and I have to like turn off my computer a little bit, but I don't know how to do it, but I see the need of like getting some resilient communities in each town and start octopusing arms out, because I don't feel, especially in the state I'm in, prepared.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Seal.
Yeah, couple things I wanted to respond to. Francis, you said you're not an activist. I think it's really important to have an open mind about what an activist is. Somebody who wants to make the world a better place. That's my definition of activist. So I think we all kind of qualify. Going out and, marching in the streets, I really like your idea, Francis, about the spectrum. And I think, as human beings living on this planet, if we give a shit about anything, we're on the spectrum. That's kind of how I see it. I don't think we need to create, very activists, not activists, like we're all in this together. And I'm also curious, like, Melanie, where are you?
Kentucky.
I'm in central
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Okay. Wait, are you north, south, central? What part of Kentucky?
So I'm about 25 minutes south of Lexington, Kentucky. So pretty much dead center.
Okay. Yeah, because my son lives in Nashville and his girlfriend is from Kentucky, but they're just over the border, so not that far from Nashville, which is a little bit of an island of sanity in some ways. But yeah, my guess is that if we start to look around, we're going to discover there's a lot of, little to medium to bigger islands of sanity. And I think, just the first order of business might be just to start compiling a list and refreshing our loose and not so, whatever levels of connections we have with these communities, all of us collectively. And then, maybe Melanie will be able to find something closer to you that you can actually go see somebody face to face, when and if you need to. Because it does feel very urgent. And I know the reason I came back to Tucson was because I have community here. And I have people around it. We're all, been thinking about this stuff for a really long time. But now here it is. And it's like the difference between being pregnant and having the baby in your hands. Like, oh my God, it's here and it's screaming and I don't know what to do with it,
Yeah, I was prepared. I read the books, but now I have the child.
Yeah, right, exactly. I've been thinking about this for 20 years, but what's the screen thing?
Yeah. But that's a
Exactly.
great analogy. We've all been studying permaculture, resiliency, all that sort of stuff. But when it really hits us and when we really have to do it and feed the dogs and take care of the energy and the waste and all the things, it gets much more real. So
yeah, and a sort of a vision that keeps coming to me, and Lee will respond to this, is that I'm a political animal, so I can't help but really pay attention to what's going on in Washington. And the more I learn, the more it is scaring daylights out of me, and it should all of us, because Musk is an insane megalomaniac billionaire who believes in that this is all a simulation. I mean, it's crazy batshit stuff, but most people aren't paying as much attention and don't realize how absolutely insane it is, what's happening and who's got the reins. So I think, hopefully I'm completely wrong and we are not going to go into a worst case scenario, but maybe it'd be better to over prepare.
yeah.
So I'm imagining, Lee, and you will totally get this, that Hurricane Helene hits another part of the United States this summer, and we have no NOAA, we have no weather reporting, we have no FEMA, we have no infrastructure in place to assist. I mean, there were millions, if not billions of dollars that went into the region to recover. And imagine none of that. What do we do?
Yeah.
Well,
that's one reason we're doing this project.
well, exactly.
I know. I mean, I'm thinking you guys who experienced it, like, what would that be like?
Well, Seal, I think I'm going to take that opportunity to let Corrine jump into her updates on the work that she and all of us have been doing, but her more than anybody. And that can give you and everybody here a sense of what we have working and where you might plug in if you're interested, or how you might contribute in your own way. So Corrine, if I need to do any slide shares, let me know. Otherwise, just please take the reins.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to screen share and see how that works.
Okay.
But first, I'll just update everyone generally. Is I am so I'm putting together manuals now of the data. We've been gathering a lot of data about successful responses to um, disasters and successful resilient and regenerative responses specifically, and putting them into a big pile. And now we're sticking them into manuals. And we could really use some feedback, help, organizing this information. Anybody that has some ideas and information, we'd love to receive it and plug it into these manuals. We plan to distribute them to different frontline organizations, whether they be disaster organizations or maybe other types of frontline organizations like churches and people who can get this information out into the communities. And we're attracting, some very interesting energies. This last weekend, I went to a conference where there was somebody who was an urban planner, architect, who's been working on recovery from Katrina in New Orleans for the last 20 years or however long it's been. And he is going to Western North Carolina to talk with the Regenerative Asheville group and other like groups about the things that they learn, mistakes and successes, to share those. So this networking is happening. Yesterday, I attended an online networking of networks meeting,
Gosh.
which was fascinating. And this is a technology that is really starting to take off, of how to bring together these various groups that have different purposes and goals but are very aligned. And so this is a movement that's ongoing. So there's all these interesting energies happening in response to the bad news in the world. And how do we use our resources and our strength and our abilities to facilitate that, to help strengthen the network of networks, and to codify this knowledge that we have, which of course is always going to be evolving and growing. But there's certain things we know about responding to disasters, avoiding disasters, escaping from disasters, and because we have had permaculturists, we've been doing this stuff for decades, and we know a lot that your average person trying to survive a disaster or recover from one doesn't know. So our goal is to get that knowledge better organized and better distributed than it has been. We're putting together a disaster checklist of resources that will be going into the We Regenerate base, which is online. And anybody can put the resources into this spreadsheet that will then be put into a public database, and where we have a column for if people want to be published or not. But so far, all these people are listed publicly anyway. So, this is for our use that we can reach out to. They're also for the public use, so people know what the alternative places we can go to respond to disasters more regeneratively are. So that's one angle. The other angle is another document that I put in there, which is our overview, overall preparation guide. So we're going to have an overall preparation guide, which has emergency response. What do you do after recovery? You go to FEMA, you go to these different organizations. If FEMA doesn't exist, here's some other organizations you could go to. So, that's just basic stuff that's on the internet, but it's not all in one place. It's hard to find. People don't know about it even months after they lost their home. So let's make it more accessible and easier to find, and also put regenerative solutions in there along with the basic things of what you take when you're running away from a fire or something like that. And along with this, if you scroll down on this, you'll see in the deep dive section. So there's basic emergency response, escape the disaster. There's basic, preparation. Like if you don't have a lot of resources, what can you do to mitigate the damage if you know a disaster is headed towards you, or if you want to prepare for one that's likely to hit. And then there's a recovery section, what you do after you are damaged.
Right.
And then there's a deep dive section, which goes into how do you recover or prepare in the most regenerative way possible, using permaculture principles and all of the knowledge that we've gained over the decades, so that we rebuild in a more regenerative way, which could help prevent future disasters. So I see all these. Yeah. So you can see, in the deep dive, we have a lot of subjects of different ways that we can respond that are more regenerative. And I've started to, if you want to go to the deep dive section.
I'm in it.
Okay, my thing's slow.
Okay.
You can see some of these subjects, and these are what we need help plugging in. If you have a solution to any of these topics that is regenerative, please share it. If you want to help put better order into any of this stuff, please let us know. If we also have a specialty fire manual, hurricane manual, flood manual, winter storm manual, where specialty steps need to be taken to prevent fire damage, for instance, or wind damage, to harden your structures and your land to these potential disasters. So this is a general one where we're going to have a lot of techniques that could work in a variety of settings and against a variety of disasters, and will also just, of course, improve your quality of life anyway. Less toxins, more independence, more economic resilience, better community building, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, that's basically where we're at. We're trying to finish a basic first draft of these manuals by the time that Lee is going to be attending and speaking at a conference in mid-March in Western North Carolina. We'd like to launch it at that time. So there's a, heavy time frame on this. And yeah, we could use some help in organizing it. Jesse, I would love to get with you this next week to go over some, just start talking about the framing of this and graphics, and maybe you and I could get together and just figure out some things about what I'm doing to make your job easier, and how you can maybe start on some of this stuff now. Etc.
Yep. Yes. I agree 100%. And thank you for that overview. I see your hand, Francis. There was something I wanted to say, but it's lost my mind. So go ahead, Francis.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, actually, when seeing this, it actually reminds me of the doctoral I had to do at Calgary. But what I'm seeing is more or less the approach is like it's a permaculture framework for disaster response, right? So I immediately jump towards like the ability for people in need to navigate this without already knowing it. So there's some things I could share my screen and show them more tools. If you guys are open to it.
I remembered what I wanted to say while you do that, Francis, and that is, Karina, I'm going to mute you just because I think I'm hearing background noise. With the goal with these, once we get these published, is to also distribute them freely to local disaster organizations, to local farms, local communities that are already tuned into this work, so that this work and these pamphlets and packets can be made available to people, ahead of time, available to people in times of need. And we're thinking both for individuals to print these out, if that's more appropriate, but also to have digital resources. So that's how we're going to distribute them. It's not just a PINA thing or an ARC thing or on the PCX. We want to really distribute them to people doing this type of work.
So if you guys can see my screen, this is like
Yeah.
a workspace I and my student put together on biomimicry. It's just an example. It's not just a demonstration because I know as a nonprofit, you get this for free from Google, and then you have the pro version for free, which you can include 300 documents. The idea is while my research process, I find research papers using semantic search and then dump this in, and you build knowledge bases for people to navigate. Then you're able to
Mm.
ask questions like this, right? And then it gives you cited responses because when I look at any attempt at making a framework stuff, right? So you can click references and search where it came from because we're building all these knowledge bases, how different places, case studies, how they actually preemptively or post-disaster recovered. And
Mhm.
then it's about getting that information to the specific scenario. And then it's very interactive. So there's the fossil. I don't know how the community feels about using AI tools given the energy use, right? So that's that caveat put there, but it's also when you use it for good, this is one of the examples. Where I talk about in my research, I talk about the future of human AI collaboration. And a lot of this is about multimodal engagement so that people can learn and find information quicker. So the idea is that the idea of what the library used to be, the future of libraries. Libraries was a place for you to find information, and you have librarians doing that. But maybe, and you always have a friend, for example, here you can generate podcasts. It's conversational from the papers you put in to help you onboard and study. But the idea is that you wish you can talk to this knowledge base just while driving or something. And it's like the future of interactions is multimodal. And I think this is like a way for if you have all these knowledge base and documents, make them available, print them, get to disaster centers, but have something like this public facing. So people can just come in and search for, I have a forest fire 2 hours from me. What do I do?
Yeah.
And then they can get information about it. And just a file out there. But
Absolutely. We're
I use
using
this for yeah.
Quick
Sorry to
question for Francis, is that available for public viewing?
This one,
What you're
this
showing us
thing?
now?
No, but I can make it public. It's I'm pretty sure my student will be fine with it. But it's like so this tool is called Notebook LM by Google. And you can come. So
Yeah,
what
that's
what
what
I
I'm
like to
curious
do is
about.
I go free for personal as well. It's just limited to 50 documents when you do this. And if you're interested, I develop stuff in AI as well. And then probably next year or two, I'm thinking about developing something similar about searching knowledge bases, and maybe we can break that limitation because there's open source models on language models that you can do this. And I'm doing that for some specifically for ESG reporting and carbon accounting tracking for enterprises. So maybe we can just take what I'm doing and then make it open for free, and then we have a disaster response kind of knowledge base for people to navigate. I ideally want to do that for all permaculture, but maybe we need to niche in a topic.
Yeah, totally. Put every permaculture book in a large language model and be able to search and pull up certain quotes or all the references to managing fire
We
or
can do
something
that
like that.
today, actually. That's actually
Yeah.
very possible. Yeah.
No, it is if you upload all the information. And just so you know, Francis and everybody, Zan is our maestro of this, but we are currently creating a library in what's called Omeka, which is a research sort of like library tool. So we are, as we get to this deep dive and we have these links and these resources, those are going to be able to be found and clicked through to the deeper dive research library from the smaller pamphlet that we have all the way to the medium-sized reports or whatever else we produce. So we're thinking similarly to you, Francis, like you should be able to click into deeper levels of research and it should be as quick as possible to find what you really need in a disaster.
Yeah. I do want to just kind of point out to that point, Jesse, we need to think about how like the upcoming generation is interacting with anything, technology or people. I like to tell this anecdote because people are very familiar with the idea of like second brain, right? Like networks of knowledge. Your in your brain, your concepts are networked together so that the way you build connections between information. But I like to tell this anecdote because while my person I know, his daughter, a couple years ago, but back then she was 3 years old, and then she wanted to show some YouTube videos to her dad, right? So you and I will probably be like, oh, go to YouTube, search bar, I know the title or I know something about it, I find the video. What she did intuitively as a human child, which is interesting in human thinking, she clicked a random video on YouTube and then just keep on clicking related videos of similar topics until she got to her video. And but like it's a funny story, but it tells like that's how people thought, right? That's like a very intuitive way of thinking human wise. And then I think like going forward when we build knowledge bases and doing good things, we need to make sure that we're building all these resources that the people that is for are trained to interact with. Like for example, when we say we can quickly deep dive, I'm very confident you and I can probably do a deep dive because we know what to look for.
Mm.
But somebody like let's say disaster happens and only a 10-year-old is the only person that's with a computer or with something
Yeah.
to do something. They don't know how to navigate it, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's kind of building it forward. It's like my comment there, and be aware of the modes of interaction with information for the upcoming generation. I'm getting old too, in that sense.
Aren't we all,
How they're doing
Francis?
something.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Francis. I love it. The multimodal approach. Karine, I see your hands up. I muted you, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and go ahead. I'm excited about the idea of presenting this in multiple ways, and that was originally the idea of We Regenerate, is to make a multifaceted portal that would reach different audiences and kind of pull in a lot of different resources and network of networks. And so Francis, very open to your ideas, and we're just trying to get the basics done right now, but we know there's a lot of things that we can explore about this, and I really appreciate your feedback.
Well, I'll just reiterate the prompt if anything bubbles up. And then with respect to everybody's time, we can close things out if there's not much further conversation based on the prompt, knowing that, of course, we'll be having another disaster town hall in a month. What are we on the third Friday of every month is our plan. We already have 2 guests lined up for that. So the conversation will keep going. If people want to plug in, that's what this next prompt is about. So the question is, what do you most need in order to, what is one thing you can do or are willing to do to support the work of Karine, even if it's just on your own? And also, what do you need most in order to help help us support you, or have somebody help support you, if that makes sense? And no pressure on anybody, but yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Clarify that if they join the working group, they'll have access to all this, everything we've got on file.
Good point. Let me show that
And
so people know where that's
yeah.
at. Keep
And if
going.
you don't know about PCX, it's all about developing community. Everything we're doing here is about developing community at one scale or another. And that was a big fault here, is that we suddenly developed no communication for one, valley to the next. And that it took a while to get that going. So in the future, but the only way, we as a species are going to live is to develop it more as, self-thriving communities. So I discovered permaculture and bioregionalism at the same time about 30 years ago. And I realized that bioregionalism is the overall factors that, your life plays. And then permaculture is the solutions that can be presented within it. So this project, we always wanted it to be a model for various other bioregions and other, disasters. But we're going to put the permaculture spin on it where nobody else is doing that. And hopefully this will lead to, other publications, jobs, consults, everything. So that's it for me.
Yes, he'll go for it.
Okay. To answer the prompt, I think what I'd like to do in the next month is focus on building up, and I know Karine has started, the sort of listings of communities and key contacts. And what I could really, I mean, this is a collective. So if everybody here today can send me those links to people they know, communities that, even if they're not formal, but they're effectively working as communities or organizations that you think would want to be a part of this, I can compile all of that. So I'll put my email. I guess that's the best thing.
Well, Seal, are you on the PCX?
Oh,
and-
yeah, that's a good point. I am, but I've been having a little trouble getting in, but I know I'm there somewhere.
Yeah, we can help you if you need help getting back in or something like that. And the only reason I push maybe people toward to put your resources there and like tag Seal in it is because then Corrine can also grab those resources and put them in her
Yeah, that's a
document.
really good idea. Right, that's the whole
Okay.
purpose of having it.
Yeah.
So I agree completely. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
maybe-
exactly.
Can I, if I can make, is it possible? I'll have to get in and play around, but to make like a little point, a little subgroup or something for
Yeah.
the network.
Yes, a private space is absolutely doable and totally free. Yep.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let's do it that way. Makes sense. But I would love if, because I'm sure collectively all of us can really expand the network pretty quickly.
Yeah. And on that point, and what Karina's sort of asking too, is like, you guys all have probably stumbled upon really cool designs for like wood stoves or wood heat or ethanol or, how to run your chainsaw and all that type of stuff. If you have links or if you're like something comes to mind, share that in that disaster resiliency work group space. Because
Okay.
that'll be gathered up, put into the big library, might make it into the guides. It's just useful to have all these
Yeah.
working
And I'm
on it.
kind of curious, a question pops up in my head about, based on what Lee was just talking about bioregionalism, that, some of these strategies are going to apply generally, but a lot of them are going to be very bioregionally or,
Yeah.
local specific. And I don't know how we would organize around that, but
We're working on that. Yeah.
it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it being like, yeah, if we have to say something happens in Minnesota or something, we might then just take the basic document and pull out things that aren't appropriate for that bioregion or that area and add things in. So it's a little manual,
Yeah.
like in terms of
Oh,
labor.
okay, so just, kind of cut and paste depending on.
Yes, it's a little modular in that way, which is,
Cool.
makes it not that much work. It's not like we have to reinvent the whole thing every time.
Yeah, that's a good framework.
We're very much thinking about that because that is so true. Some of the things are just like, why is this in my document? It doesn't have anything to do with me and where I'm at and what I'm going through. So we want them to be eminently practical for people.
There's also pattern language of the overall document could apply anywhere, but there's pattern languages like mountains, desert. There's some pattern language among the bioregions. To get really specific is going to take a lot local knowledge, really.
Yeah, and that's where I like the idea of transknowledging.
Oh yeah, I was trying to
Yeah,
remember that phrase. I love that phrase. I love Tyson. I've not read his new book yet.
I do too. He's my go-to. Like, I listen to him when I go to sleep because that helps me have good dreams.
Yeah, I think Sand Talk is an essential book. If people haven't read it, it's really a fun read, but it's also like it's like this new sort of like awakening knowledge of the indigenous perspective that he's bringing in. It's a really cool mix.
Have you looked at Right Story, Wrong Story?
Oh, what's that?
Have you seen his new book?
No, I haven't yet. You're the first person that I've heard. I was like, oh, I didn't know he had a new book, so I will check that out.
Transknowledging.
Oh, knowledging, yeah.
Transknowledging, yeah. Yeah, and he has the same totem as me, the crane.
Ah, beautiful.
We can't seem to stay in one place.
I'm
Wow.
still stuck in the era we call it cross-pollination, but now he's grafting knowledge directly.
Yeah, weaving.
I could share too. I from Sand Talk, I did a kind of a consolidation of all of his ideas into one like page thing. Maybe I'll share that with somebody with you
That's
or
cool.
in the permaculture thing, because I look at it sometimes to kind of remind myself.
I like that, like a little checklist, cheat sheet or something.
Exactly. Yeah,
Cool.
I'll dig that up.
Yeah, so Melanie brings up a good point, and others might feel this way of like, I'm interested, but I don't really know exactly with what or how much energy or resources I have to bring right at this time. So that's totally fine. It's an open door. And we realize people get busy, and then all of a sudden maybe people get really energized around a subject. So this is just the
Ebb and
place.
flow.
Join it if you have any interest in following up or just kind of like seeing where you can plug in, and plug in when you can. We already have a great team going at this, so it's moving along just well enough on its own, but the more the merrier. And the network is the great multiplier of knowledge. You know, like Seal was saying, all of us together know so much more than any of us individually. So, well, guys, any other final thoughts or hanging questions or things you want to put on the table for the next time?
Question about the town halls. Are they open to anybody? Like, can I start inviting people to the next one or? what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And
Because
we
it
would
feels
love
like we
that.
ought to have 1,000 people here. Like,
Yeah, the last one we did have what did we have, like 45 or something like
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
that was really well attended.
Mm.
But yes, part of what we're trying to do here is weaving the networks and trying to build networks. So the more you can connect us, Seal, or anybody to
Yeah.
people you're already having these conversations with or are known allies, the more the merrier.
Well, Jesse, you gotta
Uh,
be prepared because like I think the non-for-profit license for Zoom only has 400 concurrent attendees.
Oh.
yeah,
So-
well, if we get to that
We
point,
can bump it up to 1,000 if we need it or more.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I can bump it up.
Definitely. V2, you asked a question. If you just go to the Pina YouTube channel and search for Disaster Town Hall, there's a series in there. We have 1, 2, and 3 posted, so you can check those out. And what we're going to do as a deeper dive at some point probably is to bring back Seal, if you're willing, and all of our other excellent presenters to do an hour or something, a much deeper sort of dive. And that'll be more of a summit or some like deep dive, like gather a bunch of knowledge and from all sorts of experts to take to where you're at and to what you're dealing with in your area. So to be determined. But V2, in the meantime, just check out the Pina web YouTube channel if you can. Well, Seal, I want to thank you so much for spending your time and sharing your wisdom and provocative thinking on these subjects. We're very much in alignment here, and it's done nothing but sort of get us, I think, at least speaking for myself, get us excited. And sort of these groups I'm noticing are like the flywheel effect for me personally, and I hope maybe others feel this way. It's like really, I feel motivated when I meet with you all, and I feel like, cool, what's the next step? You know, it really brings the life and the energy back into maybe these sort of demoralizing times that we might be feeling. It's just great to know that there are so many folks like yourselves out there doing this sort of work, or at least thinking about it. And onward, right? What better things do we have to do than sort of like build community and support nature and support each other?
Absolutely. No, and I'm grateful to have the invite and the inclusion. So I'm super, same thing. It's like very empowering or like energizing to be with like-minded people doing work that feels really, really essential and critical. So thank you. Yes.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you on the next one in a month or so, and hope to see you around the PCX or elsewhere. And I like to end with just one deep breath in and one deep breath out, and then we're out of here. So when you're ready, just go ahead and take that deep breath in, feel it fill up. And then when you release, let the shoulders relax, the jaw, tension anywhere you have in your body. And I wish you all happy Friday, happy weekend, and we'll talk soon.